There's lots going on. Let's get to it. First, I love memes, and I thought this was just a great meme. I loved Grease when I was a kid. I like musicals. Musicals are wonderful. I watched Oliver Twist and Annie and all of that stuff. Orphans were a big part of my childhood entertainment. So I liked musicals. So Grease was something. Grease had nothing to do with an orphanage. But Grease had a special place in my heart for the musical that it is, right? And so on the top, you've got John Travolta and Sandra Dee. And they're very, very young and very innocent looking and like 1950s clean cut kids at the movie theater, and he's trying to cop a feel, right? And then you've got Uma Thurman after she's been stabbed in the heart with the adrenaline needle to save her from the heroin overdose, and John Travolta as well, who played Sandy's date at the top there. It's excellent, and it says U.S. dollar on gold standard. That's Sandy and Danny, right? And then U.S. dollar as fiat currency, and that's Uma Thurman and what's his name? John Travolta. I can't remember their names in the movie. It's been a long time since I watched Pulp Fiction, but it's the Pulp Fiction version. And I thought, yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate. That's a good visual representation of what's going on, really. Here's Jeremy Mackenzie, and he's responding to Carmaya. And, well, there's a whole bunch of things that were released, actually. The Diagolon files are one of them. And hold on a second. I thought I had that. So here are the Diagolon files. Link is in the description if you're interested. You can download the Freedom of Information PDFs that they requested and have received. They put it up on truthpedia.ca, the Diagolon files. Okay, so all of this information is source material and backup. I haven't been able to go through the Diagolon files yet, but there's lots of interesting stuff. Jeremy Mackenzie's sharing this. He says, Freedom of Information revealing thousands of pages of investigation, in quotes, on Diagolon by CSIS RCMP is forthcoming. It will take time for my lawyers and I to go through everything. One thing is clear, the anti-hate network has a poor reputation and is considered not reliable by police. Well, yeah, and Jeremy says, full archive now available for public consumption at truthpedia.ca. So there you go, and that's what I showed you right there. So you can check it all out if you're interested. Link is in the description. Rob says, my kids have gone to bed now. I've had time to wind down, and my day is actually relax and actually relax while slowly reading through Hategate. This is the best investigative journalism I can ever recall reading in my lifetime. Blah, blah, blah. And Stop Speaking Moistly says, trust her as far as you can throw her. She was instrumental in demonizing truckers and freedom fighters. And it's true. I mean, she worked with, I think, and continues to work with, or maybe doesn't anymore. I don't know if they had a falling out, but Dean Blundell. But either way, it's an interesting read, and you should probably check it out. So link is in the description. This is a link to the Sisson page. It's being carried, and there you can download the PDF. That's the link that I found. I don't know if she's promoting it anywhere else or anything like that, but here's the cover of it. It says Hategate, the Hategate Affair, Unmasking Canada's Hate Industry. And I think it's quite interesting, quite well done. It's a book, right? Like, it's a full book. It's 85 pages. So it's like the same length as the best Christmas pageant ever, right? Like, it's a very short, punchy little book. But fundamentally, there's a lot of very interesting information. First, here is a prologue page that says Diagolon is not a violent extremist group. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are quoted as saying, does not pose a criminal or national security threat. The Kristen Little to Ashley Chen on July 14th, 2021, subject Diagolon. The channels are REMVE plus conspiracy theorist in nature, but not accelerationist. And you're right, no incitement of violence. Some of the usernames have racist references, photos in them, but no criminality. So there's all sorts of different snippets of conversations that talk about Diagolon as if it's no big deal. What's going on? Here's another one. We generally agree with the key assessments. 1, Diagolon is led by Mackenzie. 2, based on current information, Diagolon does not meet dictionary definition of a group. Oh no, they're a group of terrorists. Well, I mean, why are you smearing them as terrorists? They're not even a group. I've looped in Inspector Simon Pilley and A Inspector Jay Greener, who are the project team OICs, to assist with any discussions to your NZLO or NZLO may wish to have on Diagolon. We do not consider it a right-wing militia group at this time. However, assessment is ongoing, as I understand it. We're looking at it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, and it's very, very dense. I've read Jeremy's story up to The smear campaign begins. And I haven't actually even got to enter Diagolon yet. So yeah, I looked at it and I thought 14 pages in and I'm just starting the smear campaign. Holy smoke. It's dense. It's dense. It's interesting, but it's dense. And she's got biases, but she admits those biases, I guess, in her story. Like, she lays out who she is and where she comes from. So fair enough. It's a good piece. If she's reporting truth, and it seems like she's trying to be balanced anyway in what she's reporting, then I think it's worth reading. You should check it out. You should absolutely check it out. I don't think it'll take long to read. Like, the font is pretty big. Like, sure, it's 85 pages, but the font is pretty big. So you should be able to clip through that in an afternoon. Maybe an afternoon and an evening, right? And you hope there's a cliffhanger or two, right? It's not too dry. It's written with a little bit of spark. Darshan says, we're moving on to housing. Well, just before I leave Hategate out, what's happening to common sense people is by design. This is an extreme example of what's happening to these people, right? And like me and other people, Viva Fry doesn't live in Canada anymore, but he's being censored. Other people who are even talking out with skepticism about vaccines or anything like that, or losing YouTube channels, people who are talking about January 6ers, saying this isn't what it's being portrayed as, losing YouTube channels, losing livelihoods, being talked about as criminals, January 6ers being thrown in jail and throw away the key, right? Talk about being criminalized and targeted. Jeremy Mackenzie is a Canadian example, and the Coots guys are another example, which is an absolute tragedy that we're standing and watching and allowing to happen, and I don't understand. Same with Julian Assange, right? Like, all of these things are situations where the powers that be have decided that this poses a threat, this person or whatever, or we need a scapegoat, and this will do. And it doesn't matter the reality. Right? It doesn't matter the reality. And so I'm glad that there are people who are highlighting it. I'm glad that there are people who are using the available information. I'm glad that we have freedom of information, because I tried to get freedom of information from my public health and I couldn't. So, I'm glad that there's movement. I'm glad we're moving towards sanity, but it's really difficult to believe that we're going to solve these problems, because it seems like the powers that be who caused the issues are still in charge now. And we're going to get to the COVID area, but Dr. Tam's saying it's time for masking and don't forget to get your boosters, but they don't call it boosters anymore. It's just like the flu shot. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just get them. No, thank you very much. So that's what I think. They're using the censorship. They're using the ability to vilify. They're trying to use that as an intimidation tactic to intimidate other people. If you go as far as Jeremy Mackenzie, you're going to be put in jail and arrested on bullshit charges, blah, 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 blah. Right? So I think that it's a warning, and it's a message, and they're going to try and do this all again. And what they desperately don't want is people standing up and saying, I'm saying no, and you should say no too. But that's exactly what's going to happen. And I don't know that they can contain it, but they're going to do their best. They're going to try, and it's going to look terrible, and it's going to look like censorship. So we are in, when we say no. I've got a clip from The Fugitive in today's show, because right up until the point where the person knows they're caught and dead to rights caught, like, we've got you and I'm going to arrest you if I can get my hands on you, they run. But up until that point, they lie. Right? Until they know they're caught, they lie. And then when they know they're caught, they run. So the people who are lying to us, they think they're going to still get away with it. They haven't run away yet. Right? Let's talk about housing. Let's talk about the disaster that is Canadian housing, right? And never mind the disaster that is the smear campaign against citizens that the Canadian government doesn't like. That's one thing, right? Let's talk about where not being able to find any place to live, even if you did have the social credits to be able to afford it. Right? Or the social standing, right? The ID, the social ID, what's it called? I guess it is called a social credit score. But fundamentally, even if you did have all of your, T's crossed, I's dotted, and everybody was agreeing that you could buy this house, everybody says that you could move in here and your social credit is fine and all the rest of it. Even if that were all true, you wouldn't be able to afford a house, because the Canadian housing market is a complete mess, because Justin Trudeau keeps bringing people in and doesn't care about the ability to house them. And that's just incredible and not very good, right? From a living here point of view. Darshan Maharaja says he's responding to Andrew Coyne. And this is honestly a headline. And I don't know if it's meant to be insulting, but it seems like it's meant to be insulting. Andrew Coyne says, it's not that we have too many people. It's that we have too few houses. Right. Sure, except that we just imported millions of people in the last couple of years. And then all of a sudden, the housing crisis got really, really bad really fast. Like millions of people just got here all of a sudden. Like, what kind of madness is this? So I was equating it to inviting 500 people for lunch, but only having enough for 200 people. Like, do you call them up and say, there's not going to be enough food for you? Like, don't come if you were hungry. Like, if you're planning on eating, that was a bad plan. Sorry, I invited you for lunch. Right? Like, you should do that. But instead, Canada brings them all here. And now the price of lunch has skyrocketed and only 200 people can afford it. That's how they solved the problem. They said, great, good job, everyone. Problem solved. Darshan says, if you have 200 chairs at a venue and you invite 500 people to attend the event, do you have too few chairs or did you invite too many people? How does this drivel pass for worthy commentary in Canada? This is mediocrity of the worst kind. So awful journalism, if you can call it journalism. Here's the Globe and Mail parroting the same thing. I don't know if the original was a Globe and Mail link, was it? Yeah, it was Globe and Mail. So Globe and Mail's putting out Coin's article here. Here is the article, and there's not much substance to it as everybody says. But here's the math that he's trying to justify this with. He says, because the supply of housing in recent decades has slowed to a trickle. Housing starts at roughly 260,000 annually Canada-wide are lower now in absolute terms than they were in the early 1970s when our population was barely half what it is today. Adjusting for population, the rate of housing starts is a third less than it was in the 1960s and 1970s, 600 per thousand population versus 900. If we were still building as many houses proportionately as we did then, we'd be adding more than 400,000 units a year, and no one would be talking about a housing shortage. We're not overpopulated, we're underhoused. But again, it doesn't take any consideration. At the top of the article, he makes an argument about how it's supply and demand, how all of these people got here early, or just recently got here, and ergo, it makes sense to blame the lack of housing supply on the bad immigration policies. And I said, yeah, I agree with all that. And then he turns it all around and says, oh yeah, but we're just underhoused. If we were building as many houses as we were in 1970, bull poop, absolute nonsense. And I mean, it's as clear as night and day to me with regards to supply and demand. And if there's no supply and high demand, yeah, the price is going to go up. And so that's what's happening, right? And it's terrible. At what point, how bad does it have to get before Canada says, hold on a second, we're not ready for this. We're not going to do this. Here is a little island in Italy. I think it's a small Italian island. And End Wokeness says 5,000 illegal aliens from Africa stormed the small Italian island of Lampedusa. Nope, that's not right. Lampedusa. I'm getting it wrong. This small Italian island. Today, the illegals arrived on 112 separate boats. 112 separate boats. Huh. That seems like a lot of boats. That seems like a navy. That's an invading navy landed and is overwhelming the population. The amount of people who lived on the island before the 5,000 illegal aliens from Africa arrived there, 6,000. 6,000 Italians live on the island. Here's what the island looks like today. I'm hearing French. I'm not hearing a lot of Italian there. Pretty interesting stuff. So at what point do you have to say, this is not going to happen? We're going to use our resources to make it like it was yesterday and not like it is now today. Right? Like I don't understand why there's not more people who are upset about an obvious, clear plan. 112 boats is not an accident, right? Oh man, we all just found these boats sitting there ready for us to get here to this small island in Italy. Yay, lucky us. Take care of us, please. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They want to drop the standard of living and they want to flood the population, and flooding the population will drive conflict and war. And they want all of that. They want to They want the results of all of that because that'll make people money. It's sick, man. It's sick. Holly Doan, let's talk about China. Holly Doan says Elections Commissioner Caroline Simard, in annual report to Parliament, omits all mention of China in updating investigations of alleged election fraud by foreign agents. When the foreign election interference probe or whatever it is gets underway, they're going to focus on India, or they're going to focus on Iran, or they're going to focus on Russia. It'll be Russia. It'll be Russia. They'll say Russia, 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 Russia. And it won't be anything to do with China. They may have a tangential through Russia. China did this. Like China at the behest of Russia at the behest of China did this. So, and that's the Chinese connection. Like they didn't actually do that. Beijing didn't coordinate anything through provincial MPPs. No, nothing like that. No, that was Russia on China's behalf. That's where China's name comes from. I think they're going to try and whitewash it. I think they're going to use all the resources to focus entirely this whatever it is, this investigation on anything but China. And they've got liberal judges to play ball with that. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? They control it all. Like, there's no reason for them to actually be honest about anything, is there? They haven't been up to this point. The emergencies Rouleau report wasn't honest. The Johnston debacle got soundly rejected by everybody. So why not try and take control of the narrative? That's the whole point, right? Like that's, if you're going to own everything, like the law enforcement, the media, the judicial arm, if you're going to do all that, I mean, you might as well use it. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to take control, I think, of the narrative. And they're going to say that absolutely 100% XYZ didn't happen or whatever. And you're crazy if you think it did happen. And the commission is final, just like the 9/11 commission. Anything that is outside of anything that anybody says outside of the 9/11 commission, that's not part of the commission. That's crazy talk, right? So they're just taking control of this. And we have elections commission. Justin Trudeau touted this in wherever he was, one of the recent conferences in Asia before the G20 in India. He was talking about how in 2019, before 2019 and before the 2021 elections, they strengthened election integrity. They had commissioners in place. They had, the debate commissioner, all the rest of it. It was chock full of wee acolytes, like the Wee brothers were part of the debate commission. There were all sorts of insiders doing dirty, underhanded tricks that were right in plain sight. Like not Paul Martin, John Chrétien's brother doing the lab work with the Winnipeg scientist, right? Like there's all sorts of things that if you take one quick look, you see all the depth of how deep this goes, right? John Chrétien's brother, well, maybe John Chrétien and his brother talked about this, right? Do you think maybe? So it's very, very interesting to me how they use these election commissions whose job it is to whitewash and not hold anybody accountable, to make sure nobody's held accountable, up as the underpinning pillars of our democracy, the foundational, like these people are necessary. What I just like? Paper ballots that are, taken a picture of, put up online, and everybody can count them and see them, right? With a continuous live feed, multiple cameras of everybody in the count room, and controlled access, and the whole thing put up online right after. Like that would go to quell any fears of election interference. There's all sorts of things we could do to improve our elections, as well as make sure that illegal people aren't voting, or people who aren't actually eligible to vote aren't voting. But they're not actually interested in protecting our elections. They're protecting their power. They're protecting their narrative. That's what they're trying to protect. So they remove China from the documentations. The election commissioners do, right? Because, they want to make sure that you don't hear about it. And if we did have robust, strong protections around our elections, why was it CSIS leaks that made us hear about these interferences rather than our strong election people who are overseeing the elections to make sure that they're correct? We didn't hear a damn word about any of it. And now they're saying, oh yeah, well, I'm sure it'll be Russia, but somewhere else interfered in our elections. And, we didn't tell you because reasons. Yeah, bullshit. Sam Cooper is talking about Michael Chong's being the first parliamentarian to testify before the U.S. Congress. And here's the kind of 30,000 foot look. And it says, in his testimony, Chong described how China has used a variety of methods to try to influence Canadian politicians and policies, These methods have included threats, intimidation, and financial inducements. Chong also warned that China's interference in Canadian politics is a serious threat to democracy and national security. He called on the United States and Canada to work together to counter China's interference. Chong's testimony is significant because it is the first time that a sitting parliamentarian has testified before the United States Congress on the issue of foreign interference. It's also significant because Chong is a member of the opposition party in Canada. This suggests that the issue of foreign interference is a bipartisan concern in Canada. Chong's testimony is also important because it comes at a time when the United States and Canada are increasingly concerned about China's growing influence in the world. Both countries are working to counter China's interference in their domestic politics and economies. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Back to this. Chong's testimony is a valuable contribution to the ongoing debate about China's foreign interference. It is important to listen to the voices of those who have been targeted by China's interference. This will help us to better understand the threat that China poses and to develop effective strategies to counter it. I don't know who released that overview there, but I thought it was interesting enough to read. Here is, and Sam Cooper's weighing in on this. Here is just a part of this testimony, and I thought it was worthwhile to highlight at least a minute of this. And I'll make sure, normal. Okay, so here's Michael Chong testifying in Congress. We're just picking him up halfway through, but I wanted him to make a point. So here we go.
Other tactics include targeting Chinese language media and social media in Canada, the establishment of illegal police stations in Canada, the wrongful detention and arrest and detention of Canadians, such as Michael Kovrig, Michael Spavor, and the currently detained Hussein Jalil, whose whereabouts is completely unknown. And another tactic includes coercing Canadians on Canadian soil back to the People's Republic of China. Recently, the PRC has used a tactic of creating wanted lists and offering bounties of the arrest of those from Canada. These various tactics are a serious and concerted effort to interfere with democratic activity in Canada and leave millions of Canadians at risk of being intimidated, coerced, silenced, and unable to enjoy the basic democratic rights and freedoms guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in our Constitution. These tactics cannot be tolerated in a free and sovereign country. Canada must work more closely with democratic allies like the United States in countering Beijing's efforts to interfere in our democratic life. Foreign interference is a serious national security threat to Canada. It threatens our economy, our long-term prosperity, social cohesion, our parliament, and our elections. It requires a suite of measures to combat, including closer cooperation amongst allied democracies. Canada must work toward a stronger defense and security partnership with the United States and allies. We must look for every opportunity to strengthen this partnership, to meet the challenge of rising authoritarianism, and to preserve our fundamental freedoms, our democracy, and the rule of law. Thank you very much.
There you go. So it's interesting to have Mr. Chong talking about his experiences being targeted by China. It's interesting to have him in the United States so publicly as the first sitting parliamentarian. Somebody was saying in the tweets that this indicates it's a bipartisan issue. And hold on a second, I'll read it for you because I thought it was medium interesting. No, I can't see it. Where is it? Anyway, they were saying it was a bipartisan issue and indicates how important this is, blah, 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 blah. Am I sure? It seems like Joe Biden has heavy influence from Beijing or CCP China, Communist China. So it seems interesting to me that there's influence through Biden. It seems like Trudeau's influence as well. They both at Freeland. I don't know anything about Jagmeet Singh if he's influenced that way as well, but the WEF has Jagmeet Singh under their umbrella along with Freeland and Trudeau. So it's very, very interesting when we have parliamentarians who are making impassioned pleas to, fight together and work together to root out this Chinese interference, when at the same time, I think the people in power are the ones they're looking for, right? And it seems like, not that they know that, necessarily, but it seems like maybe they should. There's concerning issues. And I've said before, you can't investigate a sitting government properly. I mean, how long have we had the whole Johnston thing, the special rapporteur, for a period of time. It just wasted time, and it dulled the whole thing. It made it seem like not as big a deal as it is. How can we have, honestly, an investigation that gets to the bottom of things when people who were put in power by that system with that interference are currently running things? They spent that money to put those people in power to have influence for a reason. They're going to use it, right? And so if we allow a government that is compromised in that way to remain and investigate itself, then we shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. You investigate yourself. Tell me what you find. Thanks. I'm just going to go watch some Netflix. Cool. Beer's real expensive, eh? Like, okay, man, like you're not doing the job. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful